Hello, this is the RPG Pundit, the final boss. And today, Meatball's just off camera, not just in the adjacent room, so she might show up. We don't know. So, today I wanted to comment on something that I've noticed I don't think anyone else has, and I think it's kind of interesting. And it relates to Wizards of the Coast. Now, where do I start? Well, you all know, if you don't know about this, if this is brand new to you, you might want to stop and check back on some of my recent videos, apart from the review, where I've been talking about what Wizards of the Coast did. And so Wizards of the Coast, in short, caused a massive conflict with their own customer base. They had tried to eliminate the OGL, the Open Gaming License, which is the license that they had created, well, that Ryan Dancy had created back when he was in Wizards. None of the current people have anything to do with it now. But that was created more than 20 years ago as a way to protect third-party products that did stuff compatible with D&D, stuff like my games, so like Invisible College or Sword and Caravan, or the Adventures in the Old School Companion. You can find these and many of my other products in the description below of this video. Links to all of them. I have 108 issues of RPG Pundit Presents, which are PDFs that you can use. All of them have fascinating topics that you can use in your OSR, RPG, D&D campaigns. And they only cost between 99 cents and $4.99. All of my products I try to keep as cheap as possible, right? Sword and Caravan and Invisible College, or even in hardcover as you see them here, but they also come in softcover for cheaper alternatives. Even in hardcover, though, they're not that expensive. They're definitely cheaper than buying the three main books from Wizards. And this is a collection of 26 adventures, which are way better than the stuff you're going to get from any D&D adventure book. So, then check out my other products too: Star Adventure, Space Opera, Lion and Dragon, a complete medieval authentic OSR rule set, Dark Albion, which is it's set in medieval authentic fantasy England, and Arrows of Indra, which I just had recently praised again. This is a D&D OSR game set in mythic India, the mythic India of the Mahabharata. So check all of those out, and buying my books is the best way to support me. You can also subscribe, share the video. I've got a Patreon. If you've bought all my games, I have a Patreon too, and the link is in the description below. The Patreon doesn't get you a damn thing, but if you want to keep supporting me and you've bought every single book I have, or you have no interest in buying my books, there you go. All right, back on track now. So Wizards tried to block the OGL, and at the same time, they tried to create a new OGL for the upcoming 1D&D, where they were going to end up charging you royalties if you had a very successful third-party product, and where they could claim any of your product to use for their books without recompensing you in any way, and where they could force you out of publication at any time for basically any reason, right? The excuse being inappropriate behavior, but that was never really defined. So it didn't have to be something you wrote in a book. It could have also been something you did in social media, and they could say, well, you're a problematic individual. We don't have to explain ourselves. You don't get all these 15 books you published and that we're trying to make money off. You can't publish them anymore, but we can take everything in those 15 books and put them in our next D&D books, and we'll make money off them. So obviously, a lot of people got very, very pissed off, right? There were mass unsubscriptions from D&D Beyond, which was really what hurt them more than almost anything, because that was D&D Beyond is a vital kind of part of their ongoing plan to try to monetize D&D more effectively. And people were outraged at them, and then eventually they turned around and they said, okay, forget it. No, I'm sorry. Well, they didn't say I'm sorry. They said, we've heard you, right? And now we both win because we're going to restore the OGL exactly as it was, and we're basically completely surrendering for now, at least, right? The one thing they didn't do is acknowledge the fact that they do not have the right to change the OGL, but they did also put all of the 5th edition rules into the Creative Commons license. So they've basically taken an irrevocable step, which is quite interesting. But anyway, so they did all that. But one of the things they did in between the start and the end of that little story is that when people first started to complain, first they tried a slightly moderate route, right? They went and they said, okay, no, that, what you saw, what was leaked, that was a rough draft. It was never meant to be published, even though, in fact, everybody knew it was meant to be published. And then they said, and this is what we're going to do. They made a different version that was slightly less extreme, but still had almost everything that people hated about it. And the first thing they put in their post presenting this, what they claimed was the real version of what they wanted to do, was that we have to destroy the OGL because there are bigoted people who are using it, right? And so they tried to make an appeal to wokeness. And I mean, it makes sense why they would have tried that, because for so many years, most of the complaints were coming from social media, from Twitter and Facebook and places like that. And for so many years, there were a ton of people that were massive posters about D&D on Twitter and Facebook and places like that, which were ultra emphatic about wokeness, right? And also all of the gaming media, right? Polygon and Gizmodo and stuff like that would make pro-woke arguments, right? So whenever Wizards did something that had wokeness in it, because the Wizards writing serfs, the minimum wage hires that they have writing their books now, those guys are all wokeists, right? So they wanted to sneak woke stuff in there. Whenever they did, there'd be an article on Polygon praising how wonderful it is and how innovative it is that they have, combat wheelchair-able dungeons, right? And how, now Strat von Zarevich is a black woman, right? So that one didn't actually happen, but the Sherlock Holmes guy equivalent from Ravenloft is now gay and disabled, and his boyfriend is black, right? the Dr. Watson guy or something like that. Like that stuff. They would say, "Oh, it's so amazing! It's the first time this has ever happened in D&D, right?" And it features a heroic woman on the cover. That's the first time that's ever happened. That's wrong most of the time. Most of the stuff they say is not even accurate, but they would praise it constantly. And there would be this whole crowd, this whole mob of people, most of whom never buy D&D products, that would praise that, and that would simultaneously attack Wizards if it ever didn't act woke enough, right? So when they got in trouble, when there was a whole bunch of customer outcry against them, it made perfect sense from a strategic point of view, or a tactical point of view, better, more accurate to say, that they would start by trying to claim, well, anyone who's against what we're doing right now is a racist and a sexist, and he's transphobic, right? And because that worked so many other times, it's worked so often throughout our recent history in so many ways. So of course it made sense for them to brazenly use as a completely mercenary tactic. But this time it didn't. People were so mad at them that they said, "No, screw you. What you're doing is just, that's just bullshit. You're just using that as a way to try to get the pressure off of yourself," and it didn't work. So here we get to the point of my video, which is that now Wizards of the Coast is carrying on. They've done their little apology dance or whatever. They're not even really an apology. They've dialed back everything that they had planned to do, and now they're desperately trying to get more people into D&D Beyond. They're desperately trying to get their customers back. And in the middle of all this, they're putting out a new book. It's coming out, I think, on the 7th of February, and I think it's called Keys from the Golden Vault, and it is an adventure book that, like most of their recent books, has a set of adventures. So it has 11 adventures for levels 1 to 11, and it's kind of a mini campaign, all of which are under the theme of like heist adventures, because of course they're also trying to link it to the movie, the D&D movie, which is basically a heist movie disguised as a D&D movie. And so they've put this out, and they've been promoting it. For a while, they had totally stopped promoting it because they were in the middle of this massive crap hole that they dug for themselves with the whole OGL fiasco. But now that that's over, they've started promoting it again. And here's what I've noted. Unlike every other book they have recently released, there's been not one word about wokeness. Not one call out about the book being woke in any way. Now, it used to be, as I said, that whenever they came out with a new book, they would promote the wokeness of it on social media. Right now, in the print books and in places where normal people would look, they would never promote it that way. Like in the back of any book, it would say, "Oh, these are 10 super cool adventures, with dungeons and extra planar combat and whatever." They would just promote it as if they were classic D&D action, right? Whereas inside the book itself and on Twitter, they will tell you these adventures will punish your players if they try to engage in combat as a solution, because we want people to instead play D&D as a traveling adventure where you look at different things with a sense of whimsy. Or, this adventure features your characters being in college and going to gay prom and being a hot mess with their lives. And we have mechanics for the different types of complicated romantic relationships that they can have. And this adventure is technically extra planar, but it's actually about going to a night market and having a food tasting competition. And like all of this garbage, right? This complete woke crap. It would be constantly promoted on Twitter, because they knew that as soon as they do that, Polygon or whoever, oh, there's Meatball. Hello, Meatball. Polygon or whoever, Gizmodo and blogs and whatever, they would all praise how wonderfully innovative it is, right? And that's why you always had race-swapped characters if it was a classic adventure or a classic setting. That's why you'd have, intentionally defiant acts of the traditional structure of the game. In the Dragonlance book, you had a black female knight of Solamnia at the start of the Dragonlance War, which is the War of the Lance, which is completely wrong. Now, I've had a ton of people, every time I mention this, I have a ton of idiots that say, no, and they quote me something that talks about female knights of Solamnia. And what I have to say over and over again, because these idiots keep trying to pretend that this is somehow relevant to my point, and in fact it kind of is, but not the way they think, right, is that the female knights of Solamnia are only allowed after the War of the Lance is over. It's part of the novels, part of the storyline is that the Knights of Solamnia are too strict and too restrictive and too stuck in their ways. And then after this, they engage in reforms, right? So it used to be you had to be human to be in it. You had to be male. You had to have a mustache. That's real, by the way. Look it up. And then after that, after the war, they kind of realized that they were, they almost lost because of how tight ass they were. And so they start making reforms, and they end up allowing people like, one of the whole deals of the novels is Tanis half-elf, and because he was a half-elf and was discriminated against, he wasn't allowed in. The whole point was to make a story about classical liberalism being progressive, right? Like of reforms happening in a way that allows everyone to be included and everybody to be equal, right? And everybody to be judged by the content of their character. And of course, the wokeists hate that. So instead what they want to say, no, what's actually progressive is if we erase all of that story of overcoming discrimination, and instead we say there was always, the Knights of Solamnia were always majority black female knights or something like that. Like that's the goal, right? This is, we made this and you stole it from us or something like that, So, that sort of nonsense is the stuff that they push forward. And this time, nothing. Now, we haven't seen this book yet, but I'm going to bet you, because it's written by the same gang of idiots, right? It's like Chris Perkins is in charge of it. And then you have Justice Armin, who was part of the horrible book, Tales from the Radiant Citadel, where when they were promoting Tales from the Radiant Citadel on Twitter, they were constantly pointing out this book was not written by anyone white, right? It's a book that was completely done without any white participation. We're so proud of having made a segregated book, like that was their woke virtue signaling for Tales from the Radiant Citadel. They were also very proud of pointing out that most of the, 57 people who wrote for Radiant Citadel, because nowadays they always have to get 30 people to write a book, because none of their people are actually competent, and in order to fill diversity slots, they point out how many of them were women and women of color and transgender people and transgender women of color and all of this stuff. And also how these people were not traditional D&D players. Like some of them were proudly stated, I've never played D&D in my life. I write vegan cookbooks. So they promoted the hell out of that. This same guy is writing for the Golden Vault. So and there's a bunch of people, a bunch of women who are writing for this, most of whom don't seem to actually be qualified to write anything for D&D. Not because they're women again, but because they have no prior qualifications writing D&D, right? Like this is the equivalent of taking someone who's been until now, I don't know, working as a vegan cookbook writer and giving them the next Marvel movie and say, you write and direct this. That's what you're doing here, right? And so you're doing it purely for the basis, these women might get mad at me saying, they have no qualifications, but I'm sorry, the only reason that you're there, if you haven't actually written D&D products, is because of your genitals, right? That's it. That's the reason you were hired. And I'm sorry that you don't like that, but you knew that coming in, So all of that is still very much happening there in the book, right? So far, the 15% cut of Hasbro employees has not yet apparently hit Wizards of the Coast. Let's all pray it does, because none of these people should be producing anything for D&D. The ideal situation for Wizards of the Coast would be to shut down that whole group of writers, encourage third-party written books for D&D, and then look at that as your talent pool to hire actually capable people, right? The guys that make the best-selling third-party product, offer them a bunch of money to write a book for official D&D, and then you're going to produce better books that will therefore sell better, because every book they've been making has been selling slightly worse for the last long while. And this one's probably going to do very badly, because there's a bunch of people that said, I'm never going to buy the book, a D&D book again, a Wizards D&D book again. Although I've also already seen on Twitter a bunch of people saying, well, I'm really mad at D&D, but I've got to buy this book, because I have to buy it. It's a D&D book. I have to buy it, right? Like there's this spurgy nerd obsessiveness to be completist. That means that the book could literally be, I crap on your mother's grave, Timmy Parker, right? And Timmy Parker, lifelong D&D player, will buy it anyways because, it's he'll probably be proud his name was on there, right? Because he has to have the whole set. He has to have one shrink wrapped. There's this stupid mentality is what allows wokeism to keep promulgating in our society, right? A whole bunch of people knowing full well that the Velma series was going to be an attack on everything Scooby-Doo stands for, if you can say Scooby-Doo stands for anything, but everything that Scooby-Doo's about, let's say. They watched it anyways. They made it a high-rated show, knowing that it was going to be horrible, knowing that they were going to hate it, but it's Velma, so I have to see it because it's Velma, right? And that mentality is something we have to stop. But anyways, it's still not going to sell as well because there's still going to be some people that have a backbone and a brain and know not to buy Wizards products, right? But I think that they've decided up at the top, they've said to the people that are doing the social media publicity, no wokeness. Because that's too weird a switch. Like the shift has just been so monumental from constant to zero. There has been zero woke virtue signaling from Wizards for the Golden Vault adventure. Zero. And so that tells me that somebody's got a absolute prohibition going on there, right? So I think that there's a couple of, first of all, the thing that seems certain to me is that they've been told, don't do this anymore, because they saw that people, when it came down to it, didn't give a damn about the wokeness when it came to their game. And so now they realize that promoting, just like trying to invoke the wokeness in order to turn people to your side doesn't work for the OGL, then promoting with the wokeness is also not going to work to actually increase your sales. And that's because the people who care about wokeness hate D&D and they're never going to buy it. Right? So that's not going to be a sale for you. And I think they figured that out. Now, it's possible that they haven't, though. It is possible that they're just like, right now they're in a panic mode and they're like, okay, we don't want to say anything or do anything that is the least bit controversial because they're all going to get mad at us again. So don't say anything woke, right? Don't say anything not woke. Just don't say anything. All the comments are like, oh, look, Keys from the Golden Vault has cool maps. It's a tie-in with the movie. It has 11 adventures. You play thieves. They're saying stuff that everyone knows already. They're just saying it over and over again, right? You can get it at D&D Beyond. Please subscribe to D&D Beyond again, please. That's what they're doing with it. So it is possible that they haven't learned a damn thing. And we're going to have to see. We'll have to see when the next book comes out, I guess, and see if they've actually figured it out. Because it is possible that they're just doing this for now. And then later, if things seem to be okay, or if they're not really worried that there's going to be some other big movement against them, they might say, well, you guys go back to doing whatever you want, right? And then they're the people that are in charge of the social media, in charge of the writing, all of those people being true believer totalitarians are going to, of course, go back to the wokeness. I don't know how woke this book is actually going to be or not, but I'm guessing it's bound to have certain woke elements, undoubtedly, because of the people who wrote it. The question is whether they put a tamper on it or not. But I don't know how much they could have, because by the time the whole WotC thing with the OGL erupted, that book would have been ready to print, right? There's no, I don't think, unless they made some really last minute edits, I don't think they would have taken anything out. But so instead, what they're doing is instead of mentioning it like they normally would, they're just not mentioning it. So beware. The fact that they're not promoting wokeness in Keys to the Golden Vault doesn't mean that there isn't going to be a bunch of garbage. And also they're all going to be bad adventures, because none of these people know how to write adventures. A lot of them are probably, especially being heist stories, a lot of them are probably going to be adventures that have to lead you through the nose. Because, they're going to think of a heist movie, right? And so we meet these guys, and then we go in here, and then we have this great plan, but then the plan must go totally wrong, because that's the next part of what happens in a heist movie. So no matter what your characters do, they can't get it right. You have to just force them by the nose and let all of this happen, because otherwise it's not, then we don't know what to do, right? So none of these are going to be sandbox type scenarios. They're all going to be scenarios where things have to, by definition, go horribly wrong, or, all the tropes of a heist movie have to appear, because none of these people know how to write adventures. Writing an adventure is not like writing a novel. It's very different. It takes a very different mentality. All of the adventures in the Old School Companion 2 are set up in for the most degrees as a sandbox type adventure, which is where you have a situation that has emerged. There's probably a chronology of things that will happen if the PCs do nothing. And then it's open for the PCs to do the things they want to do, whether it's going to whatever part of the castle that they want to go to, or whether it's investigating the thing that they want to investigate. I don't think I have really any heist stories in it. Well, I have, one, the dragon's egg might kind of count as a heist, because you're trying to steal a dragon's egg. So that might be a heist adventure. But that one also isn't guided, right? If your characters pull it off, they pull it off. If they don't, they don't. If they figure out the trap, they figure out the trap. If they don't, they don't, right? And that's part of what you have to do in a proper RPG adventure. And the problem is that at least half of the people writing this probably don't have any idea how that works, because they've neither written for D&D before, nor many of them have even played D&D in any real serious amount before. A ton of these people brag about how they didn't start playing D&D until 2017 or 2018, or sometimes until they were hired by Wizards. Some of them have said that. Cynthia Williams said that. She's the CEO of Wizards. So that's where we're at. Okay, so that's basically it. But take note of this, how they have, at least temporarily, put a moratorium, a gag on woke virtue signaling for promoting their books. The question is, will it remain? That's the unknown. So once again, if you like this video, please hit like. If you haven't subscribed, subscribe. Share this video anywhere you think people will appreciate it, and anywhere you think it'll piss people off, because that's fun too. And again, if you want to support me, the best way to do it, and the best way, if you're a real gamer, to enjoy something out of your donation, is to buy my books, right? You buy my books, you're making me money, but you're also getting stuff that you're going to find really high quality in terms of settings, in terms of rules, in terms of adventures. They're all They're all highly praised, lots of bestsellers. Every one of the books you're seeing there is a bestseller. So, check out my stuff. And that's everything for today. Currently smoking Lorenzetti Poker plus Argento Natural.